Issue 33. Sonic returns to Knot Hole finding it to be deserted, and quickly finds out that all the freedom fighters had gotten sick from a fast food restaurant. First of all, it's called McRobo's, which should have made it blatantly obvious to all of them that it was a setup by Robotnik. This is very out of character for Sally to have fallen for this. And second, where was that restaurant situated? Couldn't have been a knot hole because Robotnik doesn't know where it is, so why would they trust a restaurant that's not a knot hole? Also, Sonic found Knot Hole to be deserted, so does that mean that everyone in the entire village got sick and not just the freedom fighters? Well, I guess he didn't have the chance to find the other villagers. It's good that Sonic was given a mask to try to keep him from getting sick, but I don't think you can catch food poisoning from people. It's explained that the sickness was caused by Eggman using nanobots, and Sonic decides to make use of a surprising Chekhov's gun, the reducing, enlarging ray gun that Sonic used to defeat a giant reptile robot as Super Sonic. I'm really impressed. That's a great Chekhov's gun. And it makes perfect sense that Rotor would have held onto it all this time. Sonic plugged it into Rotor's amplifier to give it maximum shrinking power. Convenient that he had an amplifier like that right there and ready. And he shrinks himself down in order to get rid of the germs from his friends, starting with Rotor. I like how it's explained that Rotor's a huge fan of seafood. It's a nice extra detail. They didn't have to tell us what kind of food he liked, but they did. For some reason, Sonic runs into an antibody of Rotor's that is literally a person that can talk to him. It has a dress and a cane and everything. Where did you get the materials to make that inside of Rotor's body? That's absolutely ridiculous. And what's more ridiculous is that we're expected to believe she's in contact with the other antibodies in the other freedom fighters' bodies. What, does she call them on her cell phone? And it looks like the nanobots Sonic was dealing with are literally French for some reason. Not much to say about his fight with these guys. He fights them. Also, there's fire involved, which somehow doesn't kill Rotor. I do like how they bothered to remember he has a super peel-out in a non-game adaptation issue. But I don't like how Rotor's antibodies come to save the day effortlessly, even though one just said that it was hopeless and there's nothing they could do. Oh! Apparently she did have a cell phone. I was joking! At least they try to have it kind of make sense by having it be a one-celled cellular phone as a sort of joke, which is worth a chuckle at least. But still, how would she even have a working cell phone? It should really go without saying that a living being like a person would not be able to survive in the conditions of the human body, or even come to being in the first place, let alone be able to speak Sonic's language, or live in a well-lit environment. It is kind of nice how Sonic has a hard time returning himself to normal size again after saving everyone. It makes sense. Even if the first part of his plan is unnecessarily gross. He vibrates the molecules of the switch to turn it on. Considering he controls the wind all the time magically by moving really fast and creating tornadoes and such, him having that sort of telekinetic power can kind of be explained. He's just moving the atoms of the switch rather than the air. It's still pretty out of nowhere though. I like how the freedom fighters say that they're all sick of eating chili dogs, which is why they ate takeout in the first place. It's nice of them to lampshade the fact that Sonic is often shown only eating chili dogs, just because they're his favorite food, to a point where I think that maybe it wasn't worth giving him a favorite food in the first place. So it's good that they lampshade that by showing the realistic consequences of it. Sadly, the story ends on a bad note because of a joke that makes no sense. How could chicken soup be made of chili dogs? If it isn't and it's just a joke, then the joke sucked, because I couldn't even tell it was supposed to be sarcasm. It's hard to tell with a forced emphasis on comedy that makes you expect jokes, especially in a story that just had complete nonsense as a joke. The second story, quote-unquote story, is again an extremely short follow-up on the Knuckles Archimedes story that only tells you that there's someone other than Archimedes involved in the whole thing. But we don't learn who that is, so I'm just left confused and empty. Then we get the second actual story where it starts with Sonic and Antoine playing hockey, with Rotor logically serving as the goalie. like this both because it shows the freedom fighters having downtime in between fighting Eggman, and because we get to see Antoine's rivalry with Sonic again, which is really great. And the story promptly takes a turn for the stupid when we're expected to believe Snively and a bunch of SWAT bots would simply play a friendly game of hockey with the freedom fighters, without destroying Knothole now that they clearly know where it is. This is just like in the Sonic X baseball episode, only worse because it makes even less sense. At least in Sonic X, it had a light-hearted Eggman with low stakes, so I could buy that Eggman would be kooky and light-hearted enough to care for a fun game of baseball. That's why I don't have a problem with that episode. It makes perfect sense to me. Of course, it's not actually a friendly game, since Robotnik steps in and says that they'll end up roboticized if they lose, so I guess I can forgive it. I like that Tails wants to trip a member of the opposing team. It makes perfect sense considering the high stakes of losing, and it makes him more relatable instead of pure goody-goody, while contrasting him with Sally, the self-righteous hypocrite, who insists on playing fair against a bunch of SWAT bots, who I'm pretty sure would want to reboticize them anyways even if they won, except for the fact that Eggman doesn't try to threaten this after he loses, and instead just leaves them to fight another day, even though he says that he's a sore loser. This issue is just dumb. The first story was predictably from the forced comedy written by Mike Gallagher. I've heard that the plot of people shrinking themselves and eliminating a sickness from their friend's body is a cliched plot, but I'm not too familiar with it myself. I can't ever remember seeing this plot before. So that's not my problem here. This isn't gonna cause me to say ruin forever. The problem is, well, one, the story's extremely basic and not much to it. Sonic just goes in and fights an Nanobot army and goes out. It's underwhelming. The problem is it makes absolutely no sense that Rotor's antibodies would suddenly be able to fight the germs perfectly fine just because Sonic gave him a pep talk. I'm hoping that the actual explanation is that Sonic fought off the germs, but we see an antibody fighting the germs here, so who actually saved the day? And that's the entire reason the plot was resolved. Not to mention it's silly to have regular people living inside of Rotor's body, with cell phones that they use to contact other antibodies of that, all for the sake of a visual pun. This is when forced comedy really becomes a problem, when it ends up having the story make little sense. I'm guessing it's because this is a magical universe, so an overflow of magic causes this stuff to happen? And Sonic using a sneeze to go back to normal was too much. But again, absolutely love the Chekhov's gun where they use something to make Sonic grow small that he used to grow large in a very early on issue. The big picture was written by Mike Cantorvick and Ken Penders, showing a shadowy figure letting Knuckles find his way to Archimedes on his own. And while at least moves the overarching story along, it doesn't stand on its own all that well, and it's too short, so there's really no appeal to it. It's sad that the story about Snively playing a fair game of hockey with the Freedom Fighters was the best part of the whole issue. I actually kinda liked it. The story was written entirely by Ken Penders, but with the incredibly light-hearted tone, I mistook it for a story of Mike Gallagher's. It was nice seeing the Freedom Fighters enjoy some downtime rather than always fighting Eggman, and even seeing that Snively logically would want to do that just for the fun of it. It makes sense and humanizes them. Also, this is taking place in the winter, right? So, why are no other issues after this taking place in the winter? I'm guessing the winter is extremely temporary, because it would be kind of weird to think that this story takes place months after the stories before it, and that the stories right after it also take months after this story, because they don't take place in the winter either. So I'm guessing that it's taking place in the time where Eggman had made the entire world cold because of his weather machine, and so that's why there's snow there? I don't know, it's just kind of weird that they're in the winter now. This issue in general is a disappointment for me. It was pretty basic and silly and lacking. It kind of feels like a filler shoot, to be honest.